Hi, welcome to Grat's Guide to Anything. Today we have the second part of the short introduction to playing D&D 5th edition on Roll20. If it's a short guide, why are there two parts? Because the long guide would have 20 or so parts. We're going to cover the inbuilt Roll20 tool to help you create a new character. It's called the Charactermancer. When you log into Roll20 and sign into the game that you've been invited into, you need to get your character underway. Hopefully when you first sign in, there is a message in chat from Welcome Package letting you know that a blank character has already been started for you. Click on your name and your character sheet will open up. Select the middle tab, Character Sheet, and click on Use the Charactermancer. Sometimes it does not automatically start, so if it doesn't, here's what you do to start it. To find your character, you change to the Journal tab on the right. You should see something like your name's new character, Fred's new character, Mary's new character, Attila the Hun's new character. Click on this and your character should appear on the left. Click on the Character Sheet tab and then click on the little gear icon next to Spells up in the top right. Scroll down on the right, you will see Launch Level 1 Charactermancer. Click on this and the script will start. So regardless of how you got here, you should now see the Charactermancer in front of you. There are a number of screens that you'll be walked through to create your character. Generally, you will want to work from left to right. To start, click Next. Just a couple of notes before we get too far in. The 5th edition rules sort of assume that you have an idea of what you want to be before you start. Think of a character in a book or a story that appeals to you, maybe a movie or a manga. Do not make the mistake of thinking that you can create someone exactly like them. This will just lead to you being frustrated and not enjoying the game. Think of it more like they're your hero and you want to try and be like them. You enjoy yourself more this way. If you don't know what you want to play, then it might be better to approach this differently. Change to the Background tab to start with and complete that one. Finding your character's backstory will probably help you to evolve your character. Now go back to Race and see where that takes you. Also note that at any time until you finish your character, you can go back and forth as much as you want to change details. You're not locked into things until you click that final button. I also need to take a moment to talk about one of the decisions you make that is often a source of confusion. This is rooted in a big difference between computer games and games like Dungeons and Dragons. The selections you make do not determine your character's actions. What your character wants to do determines your actions. The closer you make your character to who you imagine your character to be, the more, again, you will enjoy the game. The second choice that you'll be asked to make is to select what's called your character's alignment. Your alignment does not cause you to act in a certain way. This is not like a computer game where selecting something for your character changes the options available to that character and how that character will interact with others within the game. Instead, this choice should reflect what your character is thinking. If you ever find yourself saying something like, "Oh, wait, I'm a lawful good, I should, ... slap yourself firmly in the head and do what your character wants to actually do. To help you, there are two questions which you can think about. What would your character answer? Or what would your character do? And these questions can help you determine what your character's alignment should be. First question. You are by yourself. No one will ever know what you did. There's a bag of gold coins that you've just found. The party had previously agreed that everything found would be shared evenly. What will your character do? A lawful character will want to do exactly what is agreed upon or what is their tradition which they uphold. So while a noble, for example, who has a history in their family that their family always does exactly what they say that they will do, wouldn't even consider anything else except take the money, divide it up amongst the party. A fourth generation thief, however, may have to pocket the money. It's what their grandfather would do. It's what their father would do. It's what their great-great-grandfather would do. The tradition of the family says they've got to steal this. So they're not doing it because of greed. They're doing it because of tradition. And that's an important difference. A chaotic person will want to do what their conscience says, not the rules. Rules won't matter to them. It's what their conscience says. So again, a good person might look at this and go, yeah, okay, I could divide this up, but I don't really, it doesn't feel right what we did to that widow. I know. I'll take this bag of gold and I'm going to secretly give it to the widow. Yeah, that'll make my conscience feel much better about the situation. Now, a neutral person wants to avoid consciences. They want to avoid taking sides. Whatever seems the best, the simplest at the time, that's what we'll do. So tradition and law, or conscience, or don't care. Second question. While staying in an inn, you come across an escaped slave in the inn's barn. It is someone you know who was sold into slavery because their father was a gambler and drunkard. No one else is around. No one else knows. A good person wants to figure out how to help. How can I help this person? Maybe I can speak to the owner. Maybe I can buy their freedom. An evil person will purely look to see what they can get out of the situation. How can they turn this to their advantage? Evil plot time, I know. They must have nicked some stuff to start with, so I'll start off by extorting that off them. Ooh, maybe I can pretend to hide them and then, go find out if I can get a reward or something for turning them in. Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. A neutral person may well pretend not to recognise or notice the person. You don't want to turn them in, you don't want to get involved, nothing happening here, move along. So, do good to others, consider yourself first, or don't care. So now if you put those two results together, you should now have your alignment. I'll have to put a final comment in because there is one alignment which doesn't actually fit into what we've just talked about, and that's what's called true neutral. True neutral represents those beings who prize above all else balance. Is good getting too powerful? Then I must support evil. Is chaos getting out of hand? Then I must support law. But this is done on a large scale. A new adventurer who is neutral will simply join a party because it's an opportunity for them to grow, to become stronger and see the world. It is only when they reach higher levels that they will be in a position to influence the world's balance. Whether they are helping the group rescue refugees from a flood or pillaging villages doesn't matter to them. The exception to this in one sense will be druids, and that's only because they have a bias towards nature. But even then, they're not going to object to pillaging, but burn down a forest, oh, you're suddenly in their bad books. Destroy a swamp that is the only habitat for the brown-nosed giant toad, not nice. Maybe it's time for me to leave this party, if that's the sort of thing they're going to do. Anyway, back to the guide. Firstly, you select your race. Selecting any race from the list will give you the information about that race in the panel in the middle. So you can choose as many races as you want, one after the other, and it will show you the information about them until you finally find a race that you like the look of. So for example here I've picked Hobgoblin. Might face a bit of opposition, a bit of prejudiced against them, but yeah, sounds like fun, so I'll pick Hobgoblin. The next question is alignment, which we've talked about. Again, pull down the list to make your selection, and there may be other questions which will ask you based upon the race that you've picked, and you go through and answer all the questions, and then once you've finished this screen, click on Next. The next tab is Class. This selects the profession that you want your character to follow. Again, selecting a class on the left will give you the details of that class on the right. Once you select your class, there will be a set of additional questions that you will need to answer based on your class selection. Remember that your choice can be changed anytime right up until the end. Go ahead, select the options that you want from the screen, and then click on Next. The next tab is Ability Scores. This selects your character's stats. I'll let you in on a secret here. There are very few times that you'll actually use the numbers you roll here directly. They do it this way because, well, D&D has always done it this way. And, you know, we can't go against that much tradition, can we? In 5th edition, what they do is they actually convert this number into what they call a modifier. So based upon the score that you have, you end up with a modifier. So a score of 1 has a modifier of -5. A score of 2 to 3 has a modifier of -4. 4 to 5 has a modifier of -3. 6 to 7 has a modifier of -2. 8 to 9 has a modifier of -1. 10 to 11 has a modifier of 0, and so on. So what does this mean? Well, it means that when you're trying to do something, and that whatever you're trying to do is based upon one of your stats, say, for example, you're trying to use your strength to do something, you'll roll a 20-sided dice, and then you'll add your modifier to it, and that'll determine your result, and that'll determine whether or not you succeeded in what you're trying to do. So if your strength was 3, for example, when you roll your 20-sided dice, you will subtract 4 from the roll that you get, and that's your modified roll. If your strength is 18, however, you'll add 4 to the roll. You can see then that the higher your score is, the more likely it is you're actually going to succeed in whatever task you're attempting to do. For this tab, there are 3 main ways of generating your statistics. The first way is what's called the standard array, and what the game has decided is that an average set of rolls is an 8, a 10, a 12, a 13, a 14 and a 15. So you can not bother rolling anything and just take those as a standard set of rolls. Remembering that you'll want to base how you assign your scores on the class that you've selected, as that will have the biggest effect on what your character can do. So for example, fighter, big main attribute there is strength. So if you're going to play a fighter, having a strength of 3 is going to make life really difficult for a fighter. It's not the sort of thing that you really want to do. Now what you'll do then is you'll assign one of those 6 standard scores to strength, and a different one to dex, and then a different one to constitution, and so on. Some get confused by the way this is presented. The reason for that is because they actually show all 6 rolls for all 6 attributes. And the idea is that you select one of the rolls for one of the attributes, and say, for example, you select the first roll. Then you shouldn't select the first roll for any of the other attributes. And if you do, then that one moves from the one you've selected to the second one that you selected. The second method, the point buy method. This method starts with all your abilities at 8, and you have 27 points that you can spend. To raise an ability by 1 costs you 1 point. up to 13. To raise your score above 13, that is, in other words, to 14, you'll need to spend 2 points. To go to 15, another 2 points. You're not allowed to set any of your scores over 15 using this method. As you make your selections, you will see the total points left automatically adjust. Please keep in mind your class selection as you're working with this. Now the third and final method is called roll for stats. This is the usual method that is pretty commonly used. This method rolls 4 6-sided dice. The lowest dice rolled is discarded and the other 3 added up to form a score. This is then repeated until you have 6 scores. When you click on Roll 4d6 Drop Lowest, the system will then roll all the dice for you and will show you the results in the chat section on the right. If you point to any of the scores, it'll show you what you rolled and how that total was arrived at. So for the first one there, you see that the 4 dice that were rolled was a 1, a 6, a 2 and a 1. So the lowest roll was one of the ones, so it's dropped, and the other 3, 6, 2, 1, added together, which makes 9. If none of your rolls are 15 or higher, please discuss this with your GM. They may want you to re-roll. The idea is that you are an adventurer. More than that, you are an above average adventurer. Depending on the rolls, this might make it hard for you if they're too low. You then select which score to assign to which ability. Racial adjustments and stuff will be added automatically. And you of course will want to keep in mind the class you selected. Go ahead, select the options that you want and then click on Next. The next tab is Background. You can bring down the selection list and there's a whole list of pre-prepared backgrounds that you can have for your character. Read through the list, decide what you like, select a couple of different ones if you want and then read the descriptions on the right. Select the one that you finally think is the best one for your character, and you'll probably be asked a few additional questions based upon your selection. So once you have completed answering all the questions, click on Next. You'll see that some of the items have a button next to them with Roll on it. These are items which you can either choose to select something from the list or click on Roll and have the system automatically pick one for you. Or for that matter, feel free to click on Roll, have a look, don't like that, pull the list down, pick something else. As with all rolls that you do, they are logged into the log. So if there's any questions or queries, feel free to talk to your games master about that, as they can access the logs and try and figure out what happened. Next tab is Equipment. From the top there, please select Class Equipment, and then you may have to pick from some options. Once you've selected everything, click on Next and it'll take you to the next tab. Next tab is Spells. If you have chosen a class that allows your character spells, then you now get to pick those starting spells. Once you've selected the spells that you're after, clicking on Next will take you to the next tab. Next tab is Feats. As your character will be level 1, there are no feats available to your character. So click on Next and it will take you to Bio or Biography. Here you get to pick things like your character's name. So the first question there, what character name do you want to use for your character? Displayed on the right will be some information based upon other selections you've made, like your race, to give you some guidance about things like what your average height and average weight and things should be. The conventions that we use are what's called imperial measurements. Why? Well, the system was written in the US and they're like that, so we get to use imperial. So feet are shown with an apostrophe at the end of it, inches with a double apostrophe, and pounds with a hash. So if you look at the samples that I've filled in there as we go through, you'll see that I've followed those conventions. Once you've completed all the questions, click on Next and it will take you to the final screen, Review. So read through this, make sure you're happy with all the decisions. Look out for anything highlighted, as if you've missed a question or missed an answer, it will be highlighted at this point. You can go back, fix up anything you're not happy with. Once everything is okay and nothing is outstanding, you can then click on the Apply Changes button. If you've got any questions about this, ask your DM before clicking on that button. It's a lot easier to fix it before than it is after. Your character will now be created. Once it's finished, please send a message to your Games Master to say that you've finished the process, as there are some additional steps they need to do just to finish things off. Thank you, and I hope it hasn't been too bad listening to this through. You're now in a position to actually start playing. There'll be one more video to cover a few odds and ends which you may need to decide on, but other than that, you're ready to rock and ready to roll.